The fall into darkness. She was once a girl who had everything. Her world was filled with colors, voices, and laughter. The sky of her planet shone brighter than 1,000 suns. The streets of her city were alive with music and joy. And in her heart, there was only peace. She had family, friends, and dreams of a future. She believed nothing could ever break that life. But the universe is not always kind. Darkness does not always come with warning. It fell upon her world like fire from the heavens. In one single day, everything changed. The sky turned black. Ships came screaming down like predators hunting prey. The ground shook with explosions. Her people ran, cried, and fell. The safe home she once knew was gone in fire and smoke. She ran through the burning streets, her hands covering her ears as the sound of destruction tore through her soul. She called for her mother, for her father, for her brothers. But no one answered. The city was breaking apart. The air was filled with ash and blood. She stumbled into the ruins, choking on the smoke, her eyes filled with tears, not only from the fire but from despair. She saw faces of her people, some crying, some silent forever. She wanted to help, but she was only one small girl. She was powerless against the storm that had fallen from the stars. When the attack finally ended, silence fell. But it was not peace. It was emptiness. Her city was gone. Her people were gone. The life she knew was gone. She wandered through the ruins, her steps slow and weak. There was no one left to call her name, no one left to hold her hand. The stars above looked down coldly as if they did not care. She was alone. Alone with nothing but broken stones and broken dreams. Days passed. She searched for food, but there was little left. She searched for water, but the streams were poisoned with ash. Each night she lay under the ruined sky, her body trembling, wondering if she would wake again in the morning. Her heart grew heavy with despair. Memories of laughter now hurt more than the silence. She thought of her mother's smile, her father's voice, her brother's jokes. They were ghosts now, and she was left behind. The universe had stolen everything from her, and what was worse, it had left her alive. She felt cursed. Every breath she took felt like a punishment. She asked herself, why me? Why did I survive when all others fell? But the universe gave no answer. Only the cold wind replied on the 7th night as she lay weak under the stars. She thought her story was over. Her eyes closed, her lips dry, her strength gone. She whispered one final word, a name of someone she loved, and then she let the darkness take her. But fate was not done with her yet. From the distance came the sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, strong. She did not hear them at first, lost in her weakness. But soon a shadow fell across her broken body. A figure stood above her, not one of her kind, but something different. His shape was tall, his body strong. His eyes glowed faintly under the moonlight. She thought she was dreaming, or maybe death had come for her at last. But then, the figure knelt. A rough hand touched her shoulder, not with harm, but with care. A voice spoke, deep and gentle. It was not her language, yet the tone was clear. The voice carried no threat, only warmth. She opened her eyes and saw him, a human, a being from the stars, a creature her people once feared. But in his gaze there was no hatred, only compassion. He offered her water, pressing it gently to her lips. She drank, and for the first time in days, she felt life returning to her. He gave her food, breaking it into small pieces so she could eat. Her body was too weak to speak, but her eyes asked the question her lips could not. Why? Why would he help her? The human said nothing. He only stayed by her side, his presence like a wall against the cold night. His silence was not empty. It was protective. For the first time since the fire, since the screams, since the endless silence, she felt something she thought was lost forever. Safety. She was still broken, still lost, still carrying the weight of despair. But in that moment, in the human's kindness, a small spark lit within her. a spark she thought she would never feel again. Hope. The stranger's hand. The night was cold, and the girl lay weak upon the broken stones. The fire of destruction had burned away her strength. Her body was little more than bones and bruises, her heart even weaker. But still, she was alive. Alive only because of the stranger. The human had not left her side since he found her. His rough hands, scarred from battles of his own, had been strangely gentle when he offered her food and water. She could not understand his words, yet his actions spoke louder than any language. At first, she feared him. Her people had once told stories of humans, creatures from far away, dangerous and cunning. Some said they were monsters in the shape of flesh. Others whispered they were invaders who conquered worlds. But the figure who now sat beside her did not look like a monster. He looked tired, weathered, but his eyes held something else. Kindness. When the morning came, he helped her stand. Her legs trembled like broken branches. She nearly fell, but his arm caught her. He held her steady without force, only patience. She stared at him, wondering why he cared. She had nothing to offer him, no treasure, no power, not even strength to walk on her own. The human gave her a small piece of dried bread. He showed her how to chew slowly, breaking it apart for her. His movements were steady, almost fatherly. She ate, each bite filling the emptiness in her stomach. And for the first time in many days, she did not feel like she was fading. Still, doubt remained in her heart. Could she trust him? She had been betrayed before. When the war began, her people had promised to protect one another. Yet, in the chaos, so many had turned selfish. They had stolen food, abandoned friends, even left children behind. Trust had become a dangerous dream. So when the human extended his hand to her, she froze. His palm was open, waiting. There was no weapon in it, no demand, only an invitation. But her mind whispered of danger. What if this was a trick? What if he was only helping now? Only to harm her later? Her heart battled against itself, but then her eyes looked into his again. They were not the eyes of a liar. They were steady, like a flame that refused to die in the storm. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed gently around, hers not in capture but in support. The days that followed were hard but not hopeless. He walked with her through the ruins, helping her search for what little food remained. He taught her small tricks, how to find clean water hidden in broken pipes, how to tell which fruits from the scorched trees were still safe to eat. His knowledge surprised her. How did a stranger know so much about surviving in a world that was not his own? Sometimes at night she would wake and see him sitting guard, his weapon across his knees, his eyes scanning the dark. He never slept deeply, always alert. She realized then, he was not only protecting himself, he was protecting her, and yet, he never asked for anything in return. Not food, not shelter, not even thanks. His silence was heavy, but it was not cruel. It was the silence of someone carrying burdens too deep for words. One evening, as the sun bled red across the sky, she tried to speak. Her voice cracked from disuse. She pointed at herself and whispered her name. The human tilted his head, listening. He repeated her name softly, almost carefully, as if he wanted to keep it safe. Then he pointed to himself and spoke a single word, his own name. It was simple, short, but it stayed in her mind. She repeated it, and for the first time since the war, her lips formed a true smile. It was small, fragile, but real. The bond between them grew. Though neither fully understood the other's tongue, they spoke through gestures, through eyes, through the language of survival. When she was too weak to walk, he carried her on his back. When fear overtook her, he stood like a shield between her and the shadows. But even as hope returned, danger still walked with them. Strange noises echoed in the ruins, sometimes in the dead of night. Sometimes she swore she saw eyes watching from the dark, predators waiting for the right moment. Each time the human stood ready, never letting fear break him. One night, as the wind howled through the ruins, She whispered a question she did not expect him to understand. Why? Why was he helping her? Why did he not leave her behind like so many others had? She stared at him, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. The human looked at her for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then he placed his hand over his chest and spoke a single word. She did not understand the sound, but she understood the meaning. It was something deeper than language. It was heart. For the first time she believed him. His kindness was real, not a trick, not a mask. She was no longer completely alone, but deep in her heart she still wondered, who was this man? Why was he here? What pain had carved those scars across his hands and soul? The answers were hidden, but she knew one thing. Her story was not over, because the stranger's hand had pulled her back from the edge of death, and though she had lost everything, she now had something more valuable than treasure. She had a chance, and she had him. A world of painful memories. The days passed slowly but not gently. The girl and the human moved together through the ruins of her broken world. The land was filled with silence, yet in that silence, ghosts spoke. They did not whisper in words. They screamed in her heart. Every shattered wall, every broken home, reminded her of what she had lost. When she closed her eyes at night, she saw flames. She saw her people running, crying, falling. Her dreams were not dreams at all. They were chains that dragged her back into the fire. The human would notice. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night, her body shaking, her breath sharp like broken glass. She would sit up, covering her mouth to stop herself from screaming. In those moments, she thought the world was ending again, and always. He was there sitting quietly near the fire, his weapon across his knees, his eyes steady, watching. He did not rush to comfort her. He did not speak useless words he knew she could not understand. Instead, he gave her what she needed most: safety. The nightmares returned again and again. Each time she woke, the human would hand her water. Sometimes he would place more wood on the fire, making its light brighter against the darkness. He did not ask questions. He did not press her to explain. He simply stayed, and that was enough. Still, her memories haunted her. The voices of her family echoed in her mind. Her little brother laughing as he chased her through the fields. Her mother singing softly as she worked. Her father's hand heavy, but gentle on her shoulder. They were all gone. The war had stolen them. She began to wonder if she was cursed. Was she meant to carry all their memories so she would never escape the pain? Was survival a gift or a punishment? Sometimes while they walked through the ruins, she would stop, her eyes fixed on the ground where ash still covered the stones. She would whisper words in her own language, names of those who were gone. The human would pause too, waiting. He never asked what the names meant, but he seemed to understand, for in his eyes there was a shadow. As if he too carried names he no longer spoke aloud. The bond between them grew in silence, not in words. It was a bond born of scars. One evening, as the sun was dying behind the black hills, the girl's strength broke. She collapsed to her knees among the ruins of what had once been her school. The walls were scorched, the roof fallen, but she remembered it clearly. The place where she had learned to read, to laugh with friends, to dream of the stars. Now it was nothing but dust. Tears came, not soft, but violent. She pressed her hands into the dirt, crying until her chest hurt. The human stood near her, silent. His eyes moved across the ruins, then back to her. For a long time he said nothing. Then slowly, he walked forward and knelt beside her. He picked up a small stone. From the rubble, he placed it gently in her hand. His eyes met hers, and though she could not understand his words, she felt the meaning when he spoke softly. It was not about what was gone. It was about what still remained. Her tears slowed. Her hands shook as she clutched the stone. For the first time, she realized he was not telling her to forget. He was telling her to remember, to carry her past not as chains but as strength. That night, when the nightmares came again, she did not wake alone. She felt a weight near her, the human sitting close enough that his presence filled the silence. When the fear threatened to drown her, She opened her eyes and saw him. His calm gaze was like an anchor in the storm. Slowly, her breathing eased. She realized then, she was not fighting the memories alone anymore. The days grew a little lighter after that. She still carried her grief, but now it felt different. Not a wound bleeding endlessly, but a scar that was healing. The human never demanded her trust, but he had earned it. His kindness was not loud. It was steady. One morning as the sky turned silver, she surprised herself. She began to hum. The sound was quiet, shaky but real. It was the song her mother used to sing. For a moment she feared it would hurt too much, but instead, the music gave her comfort. The human listened, tilting his head. He did not interrupt, he only sat still, letting her voice fill the empty air. When she finished, there was silence again, but it was not heavy. It was gentle. From that day, she began to speak more, not in full sentences, but in broken words. She told him the names of the places they passed, the names of flowers and rivers. He repeated them, his voice rough but careful, and in return he taught her small words from his own tongue. Slowly, two worlds began to meet. Yet even as hope returned, danger was never far. The ruins were not empty. There were others out there, scavengers, raiders, shadows moving at the edge of sight. The human always kept watch, his weapon ready, his body tense. The girl began to realize something else. He carried his own memories too. She saw it in the way he stared into the fire at night. His eyes sometimes far away, his hand tightening around the weapon. He had lost something, just as she had. She did not know his story, but she felt it. Their silence was not emptiness anymore, it was understanding. And though her memories still hurt, though the ghost still followed her, she began to feel something new when she walked beside him. Not just safety, not just survival, but the faint beginning of trust. And trust, she realized, was the first step toward healing. The first glimmer of hope. The days of silence stretched on, but something inside the girl began to change. She still carried the heavy weight of her memories, but now, when she stumbled, there was always a hand to lift her. When she grew weak, there was always water or food shared with her. And when nightmares pulled her into darkness, there were always steady eyes watching, keeping her safe. One evening, as the last light of the sun faded, they found shelter in the remains of an old tower. Its walls were cracked, its roof broken, but it gave them cover from the cold wind. The girl sat close to the small fire the human had built, watching the flames dance. The silence stretched between them as it always did, but tonight felt different. Her heart was restless. Words had been locked inside her for too long. She had tried to bury them under silence, but the weight grew heavier each day. Tonight, the silence felt like it would crush her. She wanted to speak, even if he did not understand. She needed someone to hear her. Her voice trembled as she began. She spoke slowly, her words broken by sobs. She told him about her home, about the green fields where she once played, about her mother's voice, about her brother's laughter. Her words spilled out like a river breaking through stone. She did not care that he did not know her language, she just needed to speak. The human sat quietly listening, his eyes never leaving her. He did not interrupt. He did not turn away. His silence was not ignorance, it was respect. At last her voice broke. Tears filled her eyes. She pressed her face into her hands, ashamed of her weakness. And then she heard it, his voice, deep and careful. He spoke in his own language. She could not understand the words, but she could understand the tone. It was calm, strong, steady. When she looked up, he placed a hand gently on his chest. Then he pointed to her heart. His meaning was clear. Her pain mattered. Her story mattered. Her tears did not stop. But this time, they were not only tears of sorrow. Something inside her shifted. For the first time since the fire consumed her world, she felt heard. She felt seen. That night, as the fire burned low, she whispered a single word in her tongue. Hope. The human tilted his head, listening. She repeated it, slowly, softly. Then she pointed to him as if to say, "You are my hope." He did not answer with words. Instead, he gave a small nod. His eyes told her everything. From that day forward, the silence between them began to change. It was no longer empty. Now it was filled with quiet understanding. During their travels, she spoke more, teaching him simple words from her language. He repeated them clumsily, his voice rough, but she smiled each time. In return, he taught her small words of his own, pointing to the world around them. Slowly, their voices began to weave a bridge between two different worlds, but the path they walked was still dangerous. One afternoon, as they searched for food among the ruins, a sound broke the quiet. A growl, low and sharp. Her heart froze. In the shadows of a broken wall, a wild beast stepped out, its body thin but its eyes hungry. The girl stumbled back, fear rising, but before she could scream, the human stepped forward. He raised his weapon, his body a shield in front of her. The beast lunged, claws flashing. The human fired. The sound echoed through the ruins. The beast fell, silent. For a long moment she stood frozen, staring at the lifeless creature. Then her eyes moved to the human. His breathing was steady, his eyes sharp. But when he turned to her, there was no pride in his face, only concern. He reached out, brushing dirt from her shoulder, checking that she was safe. She realized then, his kindness was not weakness. His strength was not only in battle. It was in the way he protected without asking for reward. It was in the way he gave without expecting anything back. That night, as they rested, she could not stop thinking about it. The others she had known, even those of her own people, had abandoned her when danger came. But this stranger, this human, had fought without hesitation. Her trust grew, not like fire, but like a seed breaking through stone, small and fragile but alive. The next morning she surprised him. She reached out and took his hand first. Her grip was weak, but her meaning was strong. His eyes widened slightly, then softened. For the first time she was not only surviving beside him, she was choosing to walk with him. Together, they continued their journey. The world around them was still broken, the future still uncertain, but now, every step felt different. Because for the first time she no longer walked alone in despair. She walked with hope. A test of trust. The world around them had grown quieter, but the girl knew silence was not safety. Silence was a mask, and behind it, danger waited. For days, she and the human had traveled farther from the ruins of her city. Each step carried them deeper into lands scarred by fire and war. Trees stood like black skeletons against the sky. Rivers flowed with ash. The air was heavy with the smell of death, yet even in this broken land she felt safer than she had before, because the human was with her. He always walked slightly ahead, scanning the path. His weapon never far from, his hands every sound, every shadow he noticed before she did. But one evening the silence broke. The girl heard it first. The crunch of footsteps, more than one. Too heavy, too careless to be animals. She froze, her heart beating fast. The human's head turned sharply. His hand went to his weapon. From the ruins around them, shadows emerged. Figures stepped out, tall and armed. Their clothes were torn, their faces hard. These were not soldiers, not survivors searching for peace. These were raiders, men who hunted the weak to take whatever scraps remained. The girl's blood ran cold. She had seen raiders before. She knew what they did to those they captured. One of them laughed, pointing at her. His words were in a tongue she did not know, but his meaning was clear. The others grinned. Their eyes held no mercy, only hunger, for power, for cruelty. The human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the raiders. His stance was calm but sharp, like a blade ready to strike. He spoke in his own language, his voice deep and commanding. She could not understand the words, but she understood the message. She is not yours. You will not touch her. The raiders laughed again, mocking him. But then one raised his weapon. The air grew heavy. The girl's heart pounded. The first shot rang out. The human moved like lightning. His weapon fired and one raider fell. The others roared and rushed forward. Chaos exploded. The girl ducked behind a broken wall, fear shaking her bones. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. All she could do was watch. The human fought, with a strength she had never seen before. Each movement was sharp, controlled. His eyes blazed with fire. He was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for her, but the raiders were many, too many. They circled him, forcing him back. One came from behind. The girl's eyes widened. She wanted to scream, but her voice stuck in her throat. Then something inside her snapped. For so long she had lived in fear, hiding, waiting for death. But not now, not when someone had given her hope. She grabbed a broken stone from the ground. Her hands trembled, but her spirit burned. As the raider crept behind the human, she ran forward. She struck with all her strength. The stone cracked against the raider's arm. He cried out. The distraction was enough. The human spun, striking him down. For a moment, the battle paused. The girl gasped for breath, her hands bloody, her body shaking, but the human looked at her, not with anger, not with fear, but with pride. The fight raged on. The human moved faster, sharper, as if her courage gave him strength. One by one, the raiders fell, until at last, silence returned. Only the crackle of fire and the girl's trembling breath filled the night. She stumbled, her legs weak. The human rushed to her side, catching her before she fell. His hands checked her quickly, making sure she was not hurt. She shook her head, whispering softly, "I'm fine." For the first time, she realized something powerful. The human had risked everything for her life, but she too had risked herself for him. It was no longer kindness from one side, it was trust, shared and tested in fire. That night, they found shelter in a small cave. The human built a fire, but his eyes stayed sharp, scanning the entrance. He was tired. Blood stained his arms, but he did not rest. He stayed awake to protect her. The girl sat beside him, silent. The memory of the fight still burned in her mind, but stronger than fear was something else. Connection. For so long she had thought herself weak, broken, useless. But when the moment came, she had fought, and he had seen her, not as a burden, but as a partner. As the firelight flickered across the cave walls, she looked at him. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "Thank you," she whispered in her own tongue. He did not understand the words, but when he turned to her, his eyes said everything. In that moment she knew something deeper than fear, deeper than pain. She knew she could trust him, not just with her safety, but with her life. And though the world outside was still broken, though raiders and shadows still hunted the ruins, she was no longer only a survivor. She was no longer just a girl left behind. She was someone who had fought back, someone who had chosen trust. And beside her was a human who had given her more than food, more than protection. He had given her courage. The test was over, the bond was sealed, and in that bond, a new future began to grow. The second chance. The night after the battle with the raiders was long and heavy. The girl lay in the small cave beside the fire, her body trembling with exhaustion. But when she opened her eyes in the morning, she saw him, the human, still sitting at the entrance, his weapon across his knees. His face was tired, his clothes torn, but his eyes stayed sharp. He had not rested. He had kept watch the entire night, not for himself, but for her. That day, their journey changed. The human no longer led her through ruins of silence. Instead, he guided her toward something new. His steps carried purpose. His eyes seemed to know the way, and though she did not understand his words, she felt the certainty in his movements. For days they walked across broken lands, passing fields of ash and forests burned to black skeletons. Sometimes she felt despair returning, but each time the human would pause, offer her water, or point toward the horizon as if to say, "Keep going, there is more ahead." Finally, after many days, they reached the edge of a valley. The girl stopped, her eyes wide. Below them, hidden between the hills, stood a settlement. Not ruins, not smoke, but life. Small houses built from stone and metal, lights glowing in the evening air. People moved through the streets, their voices rising like music. Her heart froze. For so long, she had only known silence and death. To see life again felt like a dream. Her breath caught, her body shook, but then fear gripped her heart. What if they do not accept me? The human glanced at her. His eyes softened. He spoke quietly in his tongue, words she did not understand. But then, he did something more powerful than words. He took her hand. His grip was steady, warm. His meaning was clear. You are not alone. Together they walked down into the valley. When they entered the settlement, voices rose. People turned to look. Their eyes widened at the sight of her. She felt their stares like knives. Some whispered, some frowned. She wanted to run, to hide. Her body trembled. Her past screamed in her mind. They will push you away. They will call you a burden. They will leave you. But then, the human spoke. His voice was strong. He stood tall in front of them. His words carried weight. The people listened. At first their faces were doubtful, but slowly their eyes began to soften. An old woman stepped forward. Her hands were wrinkled, her face lined with years. She looked at the girl, not with suspicion, but with kindness. Slowly, she extended a piece of bread. The girl froze, staring. For so long, food had only been something stolen, fought for, or given in pity. But this was different. This was a gift. Her hands shook as she took it. Her eyes, filled with tears, she whispered a soft word of thanks in her language. The woman did not understand, but she smiled. That smile was warmer than the fire on the coldest night. From that moment, the settlement began to open its arms. Children peeked from behind walls, curious. Their laughter rang in the air when they saw her smile back. Men and women offered her water, clothes, a blanket to rest beneath. Each act was small, but together they were powerful. The girl realized something. Humanity was not just one man's kindness. It was a fire carried by many, and that fire was now warming her heart. That night, she lay in a small bed for the first time in many weeks. The roof above her was not broken, the walls were not scorched. Outside, she could hear the faint sound of voices, people talking, laughing, living. Her eyes filled with tears again. But these were not tears of despair. They were tears of healing. The human visited her before dawn, his eyes calm. He placed something on the small table beside her bed, a necklace simple made from stone and cord. She looked at him with confusion. He pointed to it, then to her. His meaning was clear. This is yours now. You belong here. Her hands clutched the necklace. Her chest tightened with emotion. She wanted to speak, but words were not enough. Instead, she simply whispered, "Hope." He nodded, a rare smile touching his lips. Days turned into weeks. The girl began to help. The settlement, she carried water. She mended small things. She laughed with children. She was no longer the broken survivor wandering ruins. She was becoming part of something again. But the world outside was still dangerous. Rumors spread of more raiders, of war returning. Sometimes she saw the human preparing his weapon, his eyes distant, as if he knew the peace could not last forever. Still, for now, she had something she thought she had lost forever: a second chance. The girl stood one evening at the edge of the settlement, looking at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and fire. She felt the necklace warm against her skin. She thought of her family, her people, her past. The pain was still there, but it no longer crushed her. Instead, it pushed her forward. The human came to stand beside her. For a long moment, they watched the sky in silence. Then she turned to him, her voice steady. "I will not waste this chance." He did not answer in words, but his eyes said everything. Together, they stood as the light faded. The world was still broken. But in that valley, in that small settlement, a new beginning had taken root. She had been left with nothing, but humanity had given her a second chance. A new beginning. The days in the settlement slowly turned into weeks. and the weeks began to feel like months. The girl who once walked through fire and ashes was no longer the same. Her body had grown stronger, her steps more confident. The haunted look in her eyes had softened. Her laughter, once buried under despair, returned in small, fragile echoes. The human watched from a distance. He did not claim her story. He did not demand thanks. He simply stayed a silent protector, guiding her when she faltered. But even he knew. The girl was no longer a shadow of her past. She was becoming something greater. At dawn, she would help the others, carrying water, repairing walls, teaching the children small songs from her lost world. At night, she would sit by the fire with the human, sometimes speaking, sometimes silent. And though their languages were still broken, their bond had grown so strong that words were no longer always needed. Yet deep inside, she knew the past had not vanished. The memories of her family, her people, her world still lived within her. They were scars, but not chains anymore. She carried them as a warrior carries armor, heavy but protective. One evening, the settlement gathered in the central square. A storm was coming, not from the sky but from whispers. Raiders were moving again, stronger and bolder. Fear spread through the people. Some wanted to hide, some wanted to flee. The girl stood among them, listening. For the first time, she did not feel like an outsider. She felt like one of them. The fear in their eyes was the same fear she had once carried alone. And suddenly, she realized. She could speak, not only for herself, but for all of them. Her hands trembled as she stepped forward. All eyes turned to her. The voices quieted. She looked at the human. His eyes met hers, calm and steady. She drew strength from them. Then she spoke. Her words were simple, her voice soft at first, but growing louder with every breath. She told them of her loss, of the fire that had destroyed everything she loved. She told them how she had wandered in darkness, ready to die, until one human had given her kindness. She raised her hand, showing the small necklace he had given her. "This," she said in her tongue, pointing to it, "is not only hope for me, it is hope for us." Though many did not understand her words, they understood her meaning. The human stepped beside her, adding his voice to hers. Together, their voices filled the air. The people listened, and in their eyes, something shifted. Fear began to fade, courage began to spark. That night, as the fire burned high, the girl sat. With the human at the edge of the settlement, she whispered softly, "I thought I was nothing, I thought I was broken, but you gave me more than survival. You gave me a beginning." The human looked at her, and for the first time a true smile lit his face. Not the small, quiet smiles of before, but one that carried pride. The stars stretched above them, endless and cold, but no longer frightening. For in the warmth of humanity she had found her place. Days later, when the raiders came near, the settlement did not scatter. They stood together, strong. The human led the defense, but the girl stood beside him, no longer weak, no longer silent. She fought not only with hands but with heart. Her courage inspired others. And in that moment she became more than just a survivor. She became a symbol. When the battle ended, the settlement still stood. The people gathered around her, their voices filled with respect. Children touched her hands, elders bowed. Their heads, they no longer saw her as an outsider. They saw her as one of their own. From the ashes of her old world, she had been reborn. And as the sun rose over the valley, painting the sky in gold, she realized something powerful. Her story was not only hers, it was the story of what humanity could do. Humanity had given her a second chance, but more than that, it had given her a purpose. She turned to the human, her voice steady. "This is not the end," she said. "This is only the beginning." He nodded, his eyes bright in the light of dawn, and together, they walked toward the future. The galaxy was still broken, wars still raged beyond the hills. Darkness still spread among the stars. But in her heart she knew, if kindness could save her, then kindness could save many more. Because sometimes, one act of compassion could rewrite a fate. Sometimes, One bond could heal what war had broken, and sometimes a new beginning was all it took to change the galaxy forever.